Start the recording, and we'll get started with this week's slide deck. Okay, here's something that I know is true for most restaurant operators. They rely on gut instincts, feel, and what worked last month to make their financial decisions. They work incredibly hard and they know their restaurant inside and out, but they don't have a written, detailed financial plan that tells them where they're headed and whether they're on course. So that's why you need your own operating plan. Some people might call it a budget, but that completely undersells it. I considered it a financial operating plan. Most successful restaurant concepts have one. They generate weekly and monthly reports that tell them exactly where they stand against their plan. They forecast, they measure, they adjust, and they outperform most independent restaurants on the bottom line, not because they have better food and better hospitality, but because they have better financial visibility and they have a plan they're managing to. Most independently owned restaurants are running with a 3 to 5% profit margin or worse. Prime cost, food and labor combined should be somewhere around 60% of revenue for profitability. But if you're not planning those numbers intentionally with an operating plan, you're hoping they land in the right place. And we all know the saying, hope is not a strategy, but an operating plan actually is a strategy. An operating plan is your restaurant's financial GPS. It tells you where you're going, whether you're on course to get there, and without one, you're driving without a destination. You might end up somewhere good, but you wouldn't know it, and you certainly couldn't repeat it. Today, I'm going to walk you through how to build a 12-month operating plan for your restaurant, step by step. We'll cover how to define what success looks like for your specific concept, your specific operation, and how to build the plan from your actual historical data, how to handle overhead and fixed versus variable costs, and most importantly, how to use the plan monthly as a living management tool. I'll even show you what a sample plan looks like so you can see the structure. This isn't theory. This is the number one tool you have for taking financial control of your restaurant. We'll move on to the next slide. So you want to define success for your restaurant. Not a generic benchmark. This is a personal and intentional. Before you build a single number year plan, you need to answer the question that most restaurant owners never sit down and deliberately answer. What does success look like for my restaurant in detail? And I don't mean make more money. I mean specifically, what outcomes are you building towards? More cash in the bank, higher profit margins, reduced personal stress, lifestyle goals, the ability to invest in your team, your space, and your equipment, building a business that can eventually run without you in it every day. Your definition of success should be as unique as your restaurant concept. A fine dining establishment in a downtown market has a completely different financial picture than a casual neighborhood spot doing family dinners. Both can be wildly successful, but success looks different for each one of those, and their operating plans should reflect that. Once you know what success means to you, you tailor the plan to the realities of your specific operation, your concepts and price points, your location and customer demographics, who your customers are and what they're willing to spend, your core values, your customer experience standards, how you invest in your team, whether you source locally. These aren't just philosophical, they have financial implications and they need to be built into your plan. Without a personalized operating plan built around your definition of success, you're simply guessing at what changes will drive improvement and why those changes matter to your specific operation. The operating plan makes the abstract concrete. It turns I make more money into I need to improve my food cost by 1.5 points and hold labor at 34% to hit my target net profit of 8%. That's 8% for this year, which is what the plan says we can improve to in the next 12 months. That's a real plan, looking out month over month over the next 12 months and how much incremental improvement can we actually make over the current picture. Which brings us to the next uh, slide. How do we actually build the plan? Every operating plan starts with what actually happened to get you where you are today, your last 12 months performance. Then you project out the next 12 months with intentional improvements built in, like we just talked about. You start with revenue, and then you plan prime costs, and then you build out your overhead projections. Now we build. The process follows a logical sequence. You look backward to understand your reality, the detailed P&L over the last 12 months. Then you look forward to plan your future. Always start with revenue, then work your way down to costs and overhead expenses. So pull the last 12 months of actual financial performance and break revenue out by category: food sales, beer, wine, liquor, NA Bev. If your chart of accounts is set up correctly, and that was breakdown number one from last week's training, setting up the chart of accounts to give you the type of detailed information and metrics you need to manage your restaurant. If you have that, you should be able to pull this directly from your financial statements, from your accounting system, from your QuickBooks. If you don't have that enhanced chart of accounts we've already discussed and we've trained on here in this training series, then you may have to turn to your point of sale data. So look at what's growing, what's flat, what's declining, and do you understand why? Seasonality patterns, menu changes you made, pricing adjustments, local market shifts, the construction project that killed your lunch traffic for 3 months. The past 12 months tell the story, and it's your starting point, and you need to read that story before you can write the next chapter. Look at month over month trends. Look at your year over year if you have that data, and identify high season and low season. Understand what drives swings, because your operating plan needs to reflect the seasonality and not just smooth it out over averages, so an even sales number over each of the next 12 months. All right, moving on to the next slide. You plan, pardon me for just a moment. I need to find something to open up in the next section. I just realized I didn't have my link to it because we're going to look at an actual plan. Pardon me, give me just a second here. I need to open up my Google Drive. Wasn't as prepared as I should have been for today, and I apologize for that. Drive. Okay, we got that open. Okay, building the plan, project the future, set goals by category, project food, beer, wine, liquor, and a bev separately month over month for the next 12 months, based on everything that you've looked at and analyzed from the past 12 months and year over year. Tie your growth projections to specific actions. What are you going to do to get that 20% growth you're planning on in top line revenue in each of the different categories? Are there pricing adjustments? Are there special events, promotions, targeted advertising? Those things need to be considered and built into the rest of the plan on a cost and expense side. Each goal needs a plan behind it. Be realistic with the stretch. If you're averaging 160 months, 160K a month, projecting 200K without a clear path is a wish, not a plan. Build that stretch so you can see the route, so you can see the plan. Once you have revenue projections, you need to plan out your prime costs. Food and labor. These are your two biggest controllable expenses. Combined, they should account for 60 to 65% of your revenue. That's a benchmark. That's an industry average. Remember, we need to build this into your specific plan based on your goals and your concepts. So if your prime costs are above 65%, which they shouldn't be, profitability is going to be a struggle, and regardless of how busy you are. On the food cost side, what's a realistic improvement target based on tools we covered in weeks 2 and 3 here? If you're running 34% and you believe you can get to 30% through better inventory management, tighter waste tracking, menu engineering, build that improvement into the plan, but build it in realistically over months and maybe even into the next year. It's not going to happen overnight. How soon can you improve from 34 to 33% and then lower? On the labor side, based on everything we covered in weeks 4 and 5, where are the realistic efficiencies that you can attain? What's your target labor percentage for back of house and front of house? Remember from the data we covered, profitable full service operators are running around 30% to 34%. Now that's a big range and has a big impact on your bottom line. So if you're at 37%, what specific actions will bring you closer to 34%? And how soon can you build those into your plan? This is where the operating plan starts to get powerful, because now you're not just tracking what happened, you're planning what you want to happen and building the specific operational actions to get there. The operating plan connects your financial targets to the operational tools we've been covering in this series. Okay, planning for overhead. So you've projected out your revenue by category: food, beer, wine, liquor, not NA Bev. You've projected out your prime costs. Now we have to figure out the rest of the overhead. And you need to start with fixed versus variable expenses, identifying which things are fixed that you really can't do much about. Your rent and or mortgage payments, the insurance premiums, the internet and technology services that you're in a 12-month contract on, equipment leases that you're in a 24 or 36-month contract on. Those are fixed and not something you can control and adjust every month. Contract services of any other kind, for the alarm, for pest control, those are relatively predictable, and that's your starting point, is to identify in the detailed P&L, in the detailed line items of all your overhead, what are fixed, project those out first because it's quick and easy. Now start to identify those variable costs. Credit card processing fees are a factor of your sales volume. So whatever that percentage is, project that out, and it's going to fluctuate up and down based on your sales volume. Cleaning and kitchen supplies, that should kind of fluctuate a little bit with sales volume as well. Linens and tableware, utilities, especially water and electricity in those different months of the year. February is a much different picture than August. Marketing and promotions. What are your plans that we talked about to influence that increase in revenue? What are those plans? How much are they going to cost? And on the marketing and promotion side, when are you going to implement those? So you can see there's a lot of detail work involved with this, building your financial plan, but it's worth the effort. We're going to see how it's worth the effort. So here's the top tip on this slide. Identify what you can actively control versus what you can only monitor. Focus your energy and attention on the controllable factors for maximum impact. You can't change your rent mid-lease, but you can negotiate your credit card processing fees, or you can adjust where your marketing spend is on a month-to-month basis and the impact it's having on sales. So those are just a few examples of variable versus fixed expenses. What does a real operating plan look like? And this is where I'm going to bring in an example, because that slide is horrible. Nobody wants to see that. Let me find. I need to move that. Now, don't let this make your eyes go cross-eyed. This is pretty detailed. Let me see if I can blow that up a little bit. But you can see this is in Excel. And you can see they're starting with their sales broken out by category, their prime costs broken out by category, and their payroll expenses broken out in detail by front of house and back of house. And you can see it's month over month, January through December. And let's just look at food costs. They're starting at 35%, which is pretty high, but they have some ideas on how to reduce that. And they're reducing that incrementally month over month by a half a percentage point over the course of 2 months, and then another half a percentage point by implementing some of the tools that we talked about in a training prior to this. So you can see it, they're whittling it down over the course of a year from 35% down to 32.5%. That's getting closer to where they should be. They know they can maybe improve a little bit more, but that's going to happen next year as they continue to implement some of the tools. Now let's just see what kind of impact that has on the bottom line. This is just a sample. Let's not use this as a model because they're at a very low net profit in the bottom line in January at 1.42%. And by making those improvements that we talked about over the course of the year, they've managed to bump that up to 3.25%. That is what? Close to more than 1.5%. On a $1.8 million operation, 1.5% is going to have a pretty big impact on your bottom line. Let me find one other slide to bring over. And give me just a second again, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. Well, I would show you, but I'm not finding it. We're going to move on. All right. You get the idea, though. By building in those improvements, it's also motivating for your team as you're implementing strategies to improve the financial results of your restaurant, and you're asking your team to make changes on how they're operating and some of the day-to-day workflow. If you can show them with a budget what those improvements mean to the bottom line and maybe how much more they're going to share in the profit, then that's a motivating factor for them and for you to make the hard decisions to implement some of the things you'll need to implement to make the changes you need to make. I hope that makes sense. Now, the real power in setting up an operating plan is it's not in creating it. There is great power in creating it because you come up with creative ideas to improve, but it's actually using it every single month. The monthly review cycle is where the financial control actually happens. And that's the part that most restaurant owners miss, or they minimize the importance of having a financial operating plan because they create it once a year, it gets filed away, and they never look at it again. They build the plan once at the beginning of the year, and they often never rarely look at it again, and that defeats the entire purpose. Your operating plan is a living document. The restaurant business changes too fast for it to be a static plan or an annual plan. Your plan needs to breathe, and the only way to do that is with a monthly review cycle. So it starts up here in the upper left quadrant with the monthly comparisons. At the end of every month, generate the plan versus actual reports. Your actual revenue, actual food costs, actual labor costs, actual overhead lined up side by side with what you had planned or budgeted for. That's your scorecard, and you start to look at where are the gaps. That's the analyze. Investigate the variances. Did the labor costs exceed your projections? By how much? Is back of house or front of house higher or lower than what you planned? Did food costs spike unexpectedly? Is it a pricing issue, a waste issue, or a purchasing issue? Are sales below target? And if so, in what categories? Is the marketing working to drive the sales? That's the analytical side of it. Not every variance is a problem, though. Some months you're going to beat your plan, but you also want to understand why you're beating your plan, and maybe the plan needs to be adjusted rolling forward. The point is not perfection, it's understanding what's driving the differences. And that's with the asking why step. What changed? Why did it happen? Was it a one-time event like a snowstorm that killed a week of revenue, or a staff shortage that pushed overtime through the roof? Understand what the problems are, and then what can you do about it? When food cost comes in 2 points above plan, you need to know whether that's because beef prices spiked or because waste crept up or because someone stopped taking inventory and you overordered and there was spoilage. The plan versus actual report doesn't answer the questions, it raises the right questions. You and your team answer by digging into the details. And we already mentioned this. Based on what you learn, adjust and adapt. Maybe your revenue projections for the next quarter need to come down or possibly up. Maybe you discovered one of the problems that we just mentioned and it needs to be fixed. And maybe you discovered an overhead expense that was creeping up for 3 months without anyone noticing. Now, what can you do at this point in this month, rolling forward, to improve those negative variances, and how long is it going to take to get back on course with your plan? That's where you need to adapt the plan. So that's the cycle. Plan, execute, compare, adjust, repeat every month. Every month, the plan becomes more accurate and your decisions get better over time and more informed over time. Your control over the financial outcomes becomes stronger every month that you implement this process. All right, let me put this in perspective. The dollar amount. If a monthly review catches food cost variance by just 1 percentage point on a $150,000 revenue month, that's $1,500 you either save or lose depending on whether you catch it and fix it. Over a year, that single point represents $18,000. That's just food costs. Add labor, overhead creep, revenue shortfalls that you could have addressed earlier. The monthly revenue cycle is easily worth tens of thousands of dollars a year to a restaurant doing 1.5 to 2 million in revenue, and even more if you're doing more than that. We have restaurants all across the board, anywhere from 1.2 million up to 5.5 million. And when you're at those higher levels, those small incremental percentage changes have a bigger dollar impact on the bottom line. The restaurants that treat the operating plan as a living monthly management tool consistently outperform those ones that wing it. There's no question about that. This is how you stop being surprised by your numbers and start managing toward the outcomes you want. All right, let me summarize this. I've gone a little long here today. So the 4 steps. Step 1, define what unique success means to you. What are the unique metrics for your restaurant? What does success look like for you specifically, personally, and build your plan around that. Build the 12-month detailed operating plan. The next step, review the past 12 months of actual performance, project the next 12, the whole process we just talked about, starting with revenue, then prime cost, then overhead. Be intentional, be realistic, and plan the improvements. Tie your financial targets to actual operational actions that will get you there. Look at each month in detail and build your plan for improvement. Track prime costs and overhead, monitor the numbers that directly impact your bottom line and cash flow, weekly where you can, monthly at a minimum. Conduct the monthly plan versus actual reviews. Compare, analyze, ask why, and adapt. This is where the operating plan earns its keep. This is where financial control actually lives. An operating plan is your restaurant GPS. It tells you where you're going and exactly when you're off course. Okay, is your foundation, your financial systems foundation, ready to support a plan? You need revenue broken out by category. You need food costs calculated with the real formula that we've trained on in this series. You need back house and front of house labor separated, a point of sale system integrated with your accounting system so the data is timely and accurate. All of those things we've talked about last week and in prior weeks and in upcoming weeks, they're the foundation your operating plan is built on. If you're not sure whether your financial systems are ready to support the operating plan, whether the data you build from is clean and detailed enough, that's exactly what our Restaurant Financial Systems Scorecard is designed to evaluate. It's a free assessment that walks you through, excuse me, Walks you through the key areas of your restaurant's financial infrastructure, your accounting setup, your prime cost visibility, your technology integration, and your reporting systems. These are all things that we're covering during the weekly training, but your systems need to be clean and accurate so that you can build and monitor your financial plan. I'll drop the link in the comments below this video for your link to the scorecard. Take the scorecard. It takes about 10 minutes, and when you're done, you'll know where your foundation is solid and where the gaps might be undermining everything you're trying to build. Okay, next week, we're going to be tackling another topic that connects directly to your operating plan, cash flow. Because here's the thing, you can be profitable on paper and still run out of cash. I've seen it happen over the course of my career. And running out of cash isn't bad luck, it's bad planning. We'll dig into what happens and what to do about it. You won't want to miss that one. Thanks for joining this morning. If you take one thing away from today, let it be this: a financial plan isn't a corporate exercise. It's the most powerful management tool available to you as an independently owned restaurant operator. Build it in detail, use it, and improve it every month. Have a great week, everybody. And if you found this to be valuable, go to the Facebook page you're at here today and follow. I need to sign off. Okay, see you next week, everybody.